So today's agenda begin with welcoming remarks by Puan Siti Kamariah Ahmad Suki, Managing Director of Yayasan Hasanah. Following her remarks, Nini Marini, Head of Arts and Public Spaces of Yayasan Hasanah, will introduce Arts Fast, offering insights into its vision and impact. Next, we will explore the evolution of Malaysian literature, charting how traditional narratives rooted in folklore, heroism, and loyalty have evolved to address contemporary themes like multiculturalism, identity, and social justice. Afterward, you will have an opportunity to engage directly with our panel during the Q&A session, followed by a book signing. Please join us afterwards for light refreshments, and we would love for you to stay. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Puan Siti Kamariah to the stage.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and welcome everyone. Thank you. It's a full room and I can see so many famous writers in the crowd. I'm like quite excited to see and thank you for being here. So to the thinkers, storytellers, dreamers, champions and lovers of the arts, thank you for joining us today at Hasanah ILMU session. It's wonderful to have you with us as we dive into the vibrant world of Malaysian literature. And since 2015, Hasanah has impacted 2.9 million lives, and imagine those are like at least 2.9 million stories to be told. So we need more writers in the crowd and out there to tell the stories of Malaysians, everyday Malaysians. So we need to reach every layers of society, and I'm especially proud to say that this includes you, the local creatives and artisans we support right here in Malaysia. This is part of our Hasanah's mandate to preserve our arts and cultural heritage, one of our focus areas which are us being an impact-based organization or foundation. And today, our flagship initiative, Arts for All Seasons or Arts Fast, supported by Ministry of Finance, has become Malaysia's largest arts, heritage and culture grant in Malaysia. And this is really not possible if not for the support of every artisan, creatives in the country, and we need more to be born today and tomorrow. And the incredible folks are also sitting in the room today, and some will be speaking in front of us. And under Arts Fast, we are also thrilled to have supported literature projects like Puan Ninot Aziz reimagining of classic Malay legends, which brings to the rich tapestry of Hikayat to new audiences. Really amazing. And I'm excited to hear Ninot's thoughts later as she moderates today's session. Big round of applause to her. So it's with great pleasure that Hasanah hosts this final ILMU Hasanah session of the year, final for the year, but not the final one ever, on a topic that resonates deeply with us in the arts. Literature is a cornerstone of the creative industries, a mirror to our culture and identity. Today, we'll explore its cultural impact, the challenges faced by both traditional and contemporary authors, and the influence it continues to have on Malaysia's literary landscape. So we hope today's discussion will make us feel a lot smarter and deepens our appreciation of how literature not only preserves our heritage, but also shapes the future of Malaysian storytelling that is completely Malaysian brand. And that is part of our identity. Thank you all for being here. Let's look forward to an engaging conversation ahead. And I hope that you will ask as many questions as possible and show appreciation with your attention and also the dialogues that happen afterwards. So kisah terungkai di hujung panel, tarikan riwayat penuh enigma, warisan segar tidak berlena, suara bangsa bangga bergema. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Puan Siti Kamariah, for the welcoming remarks. Now, we would like to invite Nini Marini, Head of Arts and Public Spaces of Yayasan Hasanah, to introduce Art Fast.
Assalamualaikum. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for this wonderful, for spending your time with us this afternoon. I'm so excited to be here as part of Arts and Public Spaces. This is my second week on the job and I'm already giving speeches. I'm so sorry that, okay. But I have my team, my fantastic team has brought me up to speed. And so they gave me a few pointers. So please indulge me. They said, start the speech with, what are you reading right now? So I'm going to tell you that I'm currently reading Women Who Run with Wolves. Everybody read that? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And I'm also on the side, before I sleep, I do Ikigai, the art of Ikigai, because I think it's so important to find your passion and to find the reason for living. And I think that is why we in the arts struggle with that every day. Do we have to earn money, or do we do our passion? So for me, I stand very firmly at finding your creativity and find your art, and so that we can do better. And that is why Arts Fast is so important to us, Arts for All Seasons. Just to give you a little bit of history, we started in 2020 during the pandemic, seeing that our performing art pillar particularly needed some help. And so that fund was activated to support the artists that were surrounding in the performing arts. It's 4 years down the road. I'm very happy to say that most of them are now thriving, because here at Hasanah, we are catalysts of change. So we want to be helping you push your art forward, and we want to welcome more people in the art category. So I'm here for you to tell you that we have a lot more to offer. And if you are like writers in literature, I hope to see more of you ask for funding and support this year. Publications, your observations, anything literature, anything that I need to listen, and my team needs to listen, and then visual arts, from fiber arts to sculpture to painters, everything, even how to study in artificial intelligence versus painting, you know, that type of thing. We need to know more of that. And of course, performing arts. So those are the broad categories, but I think you know that everything has subcategories and, you know, the indices and all that, and we're not going to discriminate from any of that. So please, the call to action is to go to our website and to open up your ears. We have, we're going to be opening up the grants cycle this Q1 and Q2. And with that, I would love to introduce you to my team that is really shy. So here we are. They're just going to come and just show their faces, because you're going to be engaging with them. Please, all of them, yeah. These are the people behind it. Please wave. If you have any questions about grants, please, in the middle of the stage, everybody. So half of it, half of it is about meeting you on the ground. So you'll see a lot of them on the ground, and the other half is writing and helping you run up the grants and proposals and all that. Correct? Yeah. So they are the people you need to talk to after this. If you want a side hustle job, you know, no, not side hustle job. If you want to know more, tapi no lah under table. I'm not talking about that. I'm being recorded. Right? If you want to have more, when you have more information, please ask them. See, this is what happens when I go out of script. Thank you very much, everybody. Finally, not just that, I have to say we have another way for you to get support is through Heritage. Heritage is a huge, huge component for Yayasan Hasanah, not just in literature, but also in textiles. And we are paying a lot of attention in that area. So even if you have a project that is literally literature-based, but in heritage textiles, that is also something that you can consider in our application. So MDK, am I all right? This is all that I said? Everything? Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to wrap it up. Timing is all okay. Have a wonderful conversation. It is about Malaysian literature, from going from tradition to contemporary, and I can't wait to see what kind of conversations come up from that. So enjoy the afternoon. Thank you, everybody.
Well, she's a bit tall, so a bit. Thank you, Nini, on the introduction to Arts Fast. Today, we are privileged to have a distinguished panel representing viewpoints with varied experiences in their respective fields, after which we will have a Q&A session. To our virtual participants, feel free to use the Q&A features to ask any questions that you may have. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our moderator for today, Puan Ninot Aziz, founder of Hikayat Fandom, and who is herself an award-winning author, together with our panelists to the stage to continue with the panel discussion.
Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon. Okay, Alhamdulillah, it's so wonderful for us to be here. Before I go further, I would like to thank Atfas. I'm one of your recipients some years ago. So, Alhamdulillah, I'm very pleased to be here to moderate Yayasan Hasanah's ILMU 2024, and where we will discuss together with our panel, the evolution of Malaysian literature from tradition to contemporary. And I understand this is the first time that literature is part of the ILMU discussions. Now, by oral storytelling, we would like to take it back a bit. So oral storytelling, we take it from those stories about 200-300 years ago, which has then come over to the manuscript traditions and in the Malay traditions. And today's contemporary writing are more diverse in content and form. And one key bond I feel we share with all the panel members is that our passion in promoting Malaysian literature to the world. And we have done that through our stories and conversations. And we have stories in Bahasa Melayu, English, Italian, and French as well. And so today, I believe we have a very diverse audience who are interested in our Malay literature here as well as online. But before that, let me introduce our distinguished panel. I'm very pleased with us today. We have Datuk Dr. Zurinah binti Hassan, poet and the first sastrawan negara, a lady, first sastrawan negara. She was born in 1949 in Bakabota, Alustar, Kedah, received her early education in Sekolah Melayu Tikam Batu, and then she went to Sekolah Inggeris Sungai Layar. So we had this before, yeah? Sekolah Melayu, Sekolah Inggeris. But she obtained her PhD from UM. So UM alumni here? There we go. Dr. Zurinah served as the Chief of Information Management Branch at the Ministry of Information Malaysia. She was also a visiting fellow at ATMA, Institute of Malay World and Civilization, and research fellow at the Academy of Malay Studies. And in 2013, she was awarded Darjah Setia Diraja Kedah and recognized as the 13th Sastrawan Negara, the first lady to achieve this title, a recipient of multitude awards such as the coveted Southeast Asian Writers Award and Sunthornpu Poetry Award. And her work has been translated to English, Spanish, Russian, and French. Assalamualaikum, Datuk. Shih-Li Ko, I have watched her from afar, celebrating her success, especially in France. And I was first introduced to her by my sifu, one of my other sifus, Mr. Rahman, was very proud of her when she won international acclaim for The Sum of Our Follies. And born in 1968, she has made significant impact with her thought-provoking short story collections. And she burst into the scene. People always say, it takes 20 years to be an overnight success. I think all of us writers understand this. All writers in the crowd understand this. You slog for 20 years and suddenly you're an overnight success. But anyway, The Sum of Our Follies won the prestigious Prix du Premier Roman Étranger in 2018, and her collection of short stories, Ripples and Other Stories, actually was shortlisted for the Frank O'Connor. I mean, congratulations, Shih-Li. Now, I have always wanted to stay in a hotel that has a marvelous bookstore so that we can have conversations and read books. Now, I think we have met the very person, our third panelist, Nazir, who might be able to make that a reality one day. I'm still waiting for that hotel. He once said in an interview, a bookshop is not just a bookshop, It's a location for people to discuss ideas and ecosystem. So we are very fortunate to have Abdul Nazir Harith Fadzilah. I understand in the crowd there are people who knew him from the time he was a young boy. The founder of Tintabudi, an independent bookshop that serves as a sanctuary for literature and arts. And his venture into creating Tintabudi was sparked by a personal quest, a personal longing for books of Southeast Asian perspectives. And he spent a year in London to understand the book industry, shaping Tintabudi's growth. And so congratulations, Nazir. It's so lovely to have you here. Now we are to talk about the exciting bit. Traditional literature in Malaysia, beginning with oral literature, has a rich tapestry of stories, values, and cultural significance that has been passed down from generation to generation. Now, today's discussion will dive into themes and storytelling traditions, but more importantly, what is actually Malaysia all about in terms of our literature, and discuss how innovation in literature can actually ensure its survival. We will also explore the challenges we have and how perhaps digital platforms, which is always the buzzword today, yeah? Everything must go digital, can address these challenges. So first, together, we hope to identify what actually is termed as traditional literature of Malaysia, especially oral literature. Do we look to the Mak Yong and the Mek Mulong? Are they part of that wealth of literature? The stories then, or the stories from the Wayang Kulit, are they part of that, or they're phasing out? What are key themes? And times have changed. Key themes in traditional literature, are they still relevant today? In a world that is totally changed from what it was 200 to 300 years ago, or even longer. And how, eventually, how does all this actually contribute to our cultural identity of Malaysia when we are facing severe issues with that, I think, if we are very honest. So, my first question today is for Bunda, Datuk Dr. Zurinah. Perhaps, Datuk, you can share with us which traditional literature actually sparked your love and your determination to write, your passion for writing, and themes from those literature that still impact your writing today. Datuk.
Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to say thank you to Hasanah for inviting me today. The first question is about traditional literature which affected or impacted my writing, what I am today, and made me what I am today. Actually, if you ask me what I have read, then the answer will be a bit different. Because my encounter with literature is not mainly through reading, not 100%. Let me tell you what the situation was in those days when I was growing up. I believe I'm the oldest person here. So I grew up when your grandmothers or your mother was growing up together with them. At that time, there was no books, no access to books. What more, I stayed in a remote village in Kedah. They call it Ulu. So no libraries, and book pesta buku was not heard of. Where we usually meet, there was nothing of that sort. So how do I encounter literature? I was introduced to this beautiful words is through songs and through listening to, because literature was spread orally that time when there was no books, not even a printing press. So I would divide the literature into two parts so that I can talk more. One is the poetry, and the other is prose. Poetry is non-narrative, so you know what it is all about. I don't have to elaborate. And prose is more of storytelling and all this. So my first encounter was with poetry. So I fell in love with literature, listening to pantones. Even when my mother put me to sleep, she would sing a pantun. She sing song, lullaby in pantun. Can I give an example? For example,
Of course, please do, Bonda.
for example, she said, buah kacang katuk bilang satu-satu, tidur adik tidur, takut burung hantu. They try to scare you off so that you go to sleep. That was the psychology last time. And then I began, when I grew up, when young people those days, we sing song when we play. It's part of the play, like satu dua tiga empat, siapa cepat dia dapat, thing like that, and then you run away and then someone catch you, something like that. So we are so familiar with rhyming scheme, pantone and all that, that I too began to create my own little verses. So then, as you say, how does this impact my work later on when I become a writer? That the pantone helped me in understanding what is symbolism, that people always talk to nature, and the song also. And then when P. Ramlee sang, they talk to bulan and angin. so they say, bulan dan juga angin, engkau jadi saksi. Bawalah pesanku ini kepada dia yang ku cintai. So I began to get it that people always talk to nature in expressing their love, their feeling. So that's how until I took my PhD in the role of nature in poetry. So I have the book written also on that. So what else? That is poetry. Poetry, so we have Sha'ir and all that. But okay, about the story part, the prose part, I read Sejarah Melayu, the more sophisticated name, Sulalatus Salatin, but I just said Sejarah Melayu. And then I read about Hang Tuah, Tun Teja and Puteri Gunung Ledang and all that. And those stories wake me up. Sometimes I rethink about them, and it intrigued me to write poems on these issues. Like, for example, when Hang Tuah went to Pahang to
kidnap.
He was a Tipu Hela to get Tun Teja to bring to the Sultan. So the story of this Hang Tuah, he pretended to fall in love with Tun Teja in order to bring her back to Melaka to be presented to the Sultan. And it was one of his political gain. So I was attracted to the story because it remind me of the present situation where men, I mean mankind, not men, who manipulate other people, especially women, for their own interest to rise to power and all that. So those two things, I think, is to start off. And then is the Cerita Jenaka. Cerita Jenaka, I don't know what is this in English. Humorous story with characters like Pak Kado, this Pak Pandir and all that. I don't know what is the equivalent, whether they have such a group of stories there. But when I talk of Pak Kado, is one of the character that appear again and again in my short stories and this poem. I wrote imagining that Pak Kado has a grandson and he wanted to take back the tanah, no? The land, whether it is kampung or tanah, from which is manipulated. The Sultan was so heartless to take his this one, so his kampung tergadai. So the cucu Pak Kado went to court, and I cut it short. He won the court case, and he got the land. So what he can do with the land, he wanted to start a poultry farming, but he doesn't have much money because all the money has been used for the lawsuit. So he cagar the land to the bank, and if he fail rugi in the poultry farming, the bank will take back his land. So now the bank become the Raja. So we have a different Raja.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Datuk, because I think through your storytelling, you have just taken us right back to where we are today. You know, with the lawsuit and the bank and the chaga and everything, it suddenly sounds so familiar. Thank you. And I think that was the intention, to bring how key values of the past actually impact us today. I would just like to say something very, very quickly before we get to Shih-Li. One of the first things that Datuk said was about pantun and nature. And suddenly today, we have sustainability being such a huge topic and such a huge problem for humanity. Now, very often, I think if we have infused our younger generation with poetry, like how it infused Datuk, perhaps then our children would be more inclined to be kind and to think about sustainability and the world and nature around us. That's number one. And number two, you talked about history, how history impacted you then and how it continues to impact us now. And thirdly, of course, court and political and that takes place then is still with us until today, and we will never be able to be rid of it, it looks like. Thank you, Datuk. Shirley, when your book, since we're talking about oral storytelling, literature, and stories, now your very first chapter starts with, and I found that very interesting, the Aceh princess, correct? Diving off the cliff. Now, I think that was a little story that you put in, but you felt it was necessary to go back to traditional stories to get everyone in the mood to enjoy your novel. Can you please explain why you did that and how it impacts your whole writing?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. In all my time, this is the first time I've been asked this question. Okay, my first chapter sets the tone. I mean, I describe a fictional town in the state of Perak. Perak is not fictional, but the town and the geography completely is fictional. And I also introduced a little DIY legend into the story, the princess that you mentioned. And the princess is actually, people are not clear whether it's a Chinese princess or an Achenese princess. So I think that's the case with us now. Sometimes you're a little bit unsure where the stories come from, and then everybody wants to claim, you know, this is from this origin or that origin. So I wanted to introduce a little bit of ambiguity into the story. And then she dives off a cliff because she's trying to escape an old prince who wants a fourth wife, and she kills herself to avoid that being married to an old man, and that carries on. I think when you ask me why I introduced it, I think in the writing, I think if you ask a writer why they write something, it's sometimes a little bit hard to answer the why, but I think the whole tone I wanted to set, as you rightly say, is a little bit of fabulism, that there's something that things are fantastical here. You do hear these outrageous stories sometimes within Malaysia, and that's very much a part of our storytelling culture. It's very much a part of our literature and how we live here. So it's very everyday to us. I think there's a term. I mean, readers would know magical literature, magical realism. It's always attributed to Latin American writers, right? I think because the volume of work there is well known, is well publicized. But I think if Southeast Asian writing had a first claim on it, we should have been the source of magical realism story. It really should have been in this part of the world. You know? So I think why I had it in there is, yes, just to tell the audience that be ready, that there are fantastical things happening. If you want to know more, you can go in and look it up.
Thank you. I'm glad that was the answer. Because yes, the fantastical is norm in the Malay archipelago, I think. We are so tuned to ideas of kayangan, people flying from kayangan, diving into the depth of the sea, and that is normal for us. And everything is possible and nothing is impossible.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add, I think, there's also a lot of tragedy in the local folklore. There's a lot of death. It's quite often tragic, and it's not always a happy ending in our stories.
And why do you think that is so?
I don't know. I think maybe the Western fairy tales that we've been used to, I think they've been sanitized over many centuries. They've been told and retold, and then somewhere along the way, that happy ending has become ingrained, in the books that have that are sold to children, you know. But I think maybe for stories coming out from this part of the world, we've not gone through that length of time where it has evolved and it has been sanitized. I don't think we've reached that state yet. So maybe it's still a bit raw. I don't know, you know, in its form.
Perhaps, but I think it is wonderful that it's raw. I think reality is still part of our storytelling, and it is a good way. I've always felt it is a good way to introduce death, the concept of death, the concept of poverty, the concept of imagining what you can do to our younger generation. So I think those are things that we should keep. The West decided to do away with it. They, perhaps through capitalism, what sells and all that in movies, etc. But I think we should maintain those very ideals.
Maybe I'll also add to that. I think it also, in many of our stories, life isn't fair. You know, you have a mother who did something wrong and then she dies, you know, things like that. And I think it's really a reality check. You know, it teaches us how to toughen up. You've got to deal with life. It's not always fair. The prince doesn't always come and rescue you and takes you away to a big castle. You know.
Good for us. Yes? Okay, so now that we've seen how Malaysian literature sort of grows and gives us a cultural identity, I think today it suddenly becomes clear to me, I hope to the audience too, but we'd like to see whether all this still has a place, especially in our local bookstores, our readers. Is this what they want to see? Basically, the question would be, does our Malaysian literature, based on oral storytelling and older hikayat and legends that come from all around, not only, you know, from Semenanjung, or so does it have a place in our local bookstores today?
Hello, thank you for having me here. Okay, to give a perspective from a bookseller and a reader myself, there is always a place for traditional literature in the bookstore. But for me personally, I look at it as how we tiered the readership. So we have maybe the highly specialized, we have the mid-tier, and we have the beginner. So I think not say the problem, but we don't have enough of the material in our bookshop. That's a problem. And the point of contact between a reader with this kind of folklore material is so scarce nowadays. So during those days, maybe in 60s, 50s, 60s, DBP was publishing a whole array of folktales, a whole arrays of books that retell this kind of like old story, old literature. But now you hardly can see that around. And now we can see like what Ninot are being doing, so smaller enterprise, but not the big enterprise. In that sense, me personally, I'm not saying that I'm young, but I also don't have that much in touch with old literature, folklore, and those kind of stuff. So we only hear the usual Putri Gunung Ledang and whatnot, which also being popularized by Tiara Jacquelina, to be honest. For my generation, because we know that story because of that theater that she's been doing. So there is a need for retelling, and not necessarily in exact manner, like what Shih-Li said before. The Western canon has been retelling folklore stories with a different format, with a different imaginative storyline, like you see with Lord of the Rings, with Narnia, with a lot of like this modern, fantastic stories, but take motif from the folklore corpus. So in that sense, it gave relevance for traditional literature to exist, because at the end of the day, traditional literature also gone through the process of retelling. So what we know of a traditional literature might not be what the traditional people know of the traditional literature. So it's always evolved. It's always has the creative process of trying to negotiate between the now and the past. But the very Yep. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, distorted in one sense, and also maybe trying to re-emphasize a certain theme in traditional literature. You see a lot, for example, you see Shakespeare has been retold with a different format, but the theme is the same, the inner struggle of a man, a woman, or humanity. So that is being brought up to light with this new version of stories. So for a bookseller, there is always a room for this kind of story, but we don't have enough and we need more, because a lot of like our readers are looking for this kind of stories, to be honest. So if they can't find them, they will go to Western canon or even outside of literature canon, because they provide this kind of like craving for this kind of stories. Yep.
If I may say, when you see, very often we look to the Japanese, the Chinese, and Korean storytelling and writing, animation, and movies. They have managed to excite the world with their stories. And yet their stories are always true, a certain part of it, or the whole story itself, would be true to their heritage. How do they do that? Would you have thoughts on this?
I think I'm also a consumer of Japanese manga. So the unique thing about Japanese manga, it's always present, but the motif is really traditional.
Yes.
The deities that they use, maybe albeit in a different context and in a different situation, but they always wanted to bring it out. In a sense, you as a reader, you will look back, okay, where does this influence come from? And then you will go back to the traditional literature. So it needs a creative process of how we're going to present this traditional literature to the new generation of the masses. And it becomes more difficult now because the medium is varied. So you're not competing just for traditional written materials, you're competing with visual, you're competing with audio. So how do we strike a balance in trying to basically introduce, educate this newer generation and future generation of our heritage? Yeah.
Okay. So from that perspective, I would really like to go back to Shih-Li. First, we acknowledge the world has changed. The world has changed. There is I think we have to admit there is a separation between traditional law and contemporary literature. I think there is a separation as opposed to including them in the current narrative. So what I would like to ask Shih-Li is, a few years ago, you actually said this in an interview when asked why you write. Sometimes I think it's because I want to leave a record of these times that we are living in. And many write about historical periods, and there is a lot of science fiction. We don't have much fiction on contemporary Malaysia in this day and age, and I think fiction fills a gap, a space. It is not news, but it's a record of what it is like to live in this particular time. And I resonate with that very much because I feel through Hikayat, I share a record of how times were in those days. So how do you bring this about in your storytelling to ensure something that is living is today? How do you bring that into your novel and storytelling?
I think I write mainly contemporary fiction, meaning this day and age. I take a lot of influence from what is happening at the current point of time, because what we call contemporary now becomes historical in 30 years, in 50 years. You know, whatever was written in the 70s is now historical fiction, right? So I allow the influences to come in. I try to build it into the background of whatever I'm writing about, and let the characters experience it as I am experiencing my life right now. You know, I think it's, for me, I find it a little bit difficult to intentionally build in lore or myth unless I'm setting out to write something like that. But
Okay.
it's more oblique. It's more coming in a sideways manner. That maybe it's a story that's being told. Maybe something has happened, and there's a shadow of it in the plot. You know.
Okay. So it is really what is happening today that goes into your story.
Yes.
Yes. And in a sense, you said that it's difficult for you to fuse traditional law into it.
Yeah, and I think I go back to what Nazir mentioned just now. I think growing up, I didn't have that much of an exposure to local law because there were no books. There were,
Exactly.
yeah, I had Aesop's Fables, I had Hans Christian Andersen, but I didn't have a book of traditional or local stories, you know. So there were bits and pieces told to me. I mean, I have some grandmother stories, we all have, but they're very fragmented, and we don't really get a full sense. And I think also being Chinese, we are also a little bit divorced from the law of mainland China. You know, we are here in Malaysia, but we're not hearing the Malaysian stories. Yet the stories from China are not my stories because I don't relate to that. You know, so I do wish there was like a book equivalent to Hans Christian Andersen or Aesop's Fables available. You know, nicely done up for the parents to read to the kids. I think the publishers now are starting to do. I mean, you're doing work around that. I think. I think there are children's authors as well who are producing these books, but I think it's slow, lah. You know, it's slowly getting there.
Well, we're lucky in the audience today. We have Cikgu
Yeah.
Yen and Tutu Duta,
Yeah, Tutu Duta
who
is-
write stories based on our Malaysian folklore, and more are coming out with that. So perhaps the next generation of writers would not have this problem of not having these literature available. We always say this, tak kenal maka tak cinta. It's really, really true.
Yeah, and I think many people are trying to do these retellings. I think we've seen some publications where stories are retelling of Sitanggang or Batu Belabat Petangkop, you know, that kind of things. But I think every time there's a retelling, it's really nice when the person who's writing it has a solid background of the source material. Then you retell it in a way that is good, rather than just putting like a woke spin on it, like, you know, just make it feminist or something like that. Then it's really, I think the integrity of the original story should still come through in the retellings.
Thank you for that. Datuk, so the actual question today is for you. Does contemporary writing actually challenge traditional literature in terms of, is it going towards replacing traditional literature? I know it's or rather traditional narratives. What is your take on that?
I thought I was speaking at home,
Which is nice.
which is nice. If we compare traditional literature to modern literature, is of course they have differences in the style of languages and all that, characterization. But I don't quite see what you say. Does it replace the traditional literature? But if we examine what is being written today, many of the stories also, or the pantun, and the pantun is being popular nowadays, being recited, being used in songs and all that. So I don't see any that it threaten the tradition. What that answer your question?
I
Not
think what I'm trying to ask is, do we see contemporary literature being more, to put it very simplistic, being more popular and accepted by Malaysians as a whole, because as Shih-Li mentioned, the traditional literature was not available. It was, and slowly throughout the years, it has even disappeared from the schools. So it is not as, it is, for example, Datuk, during your time, it is normal to have syair and pantun as evening entertainment even. But now we do not have that. That is almost gone. While pantun is still available, but it is not everyday life that we have pantun. We might have pantun in speeches. We might have pantun at weddings, but it's not everyday life as before. It is not the thought of the people as they go out to sea or as they come back from work. It is not part of us all the time. And so because of that, that cadence, that literature is not with us.
So because of the digital platform or something like that?
It's not even digital platform. I think throughout the years, we have had many influences through the 70s, 80s, 90s until today. So all that has sort of taken us away from traditional literature. And because of that, contemporary writing, I mean, if I'm talking from experience, when I meet young teenagers and they start writing their own stories, they write stories from a Western perspective. They're used to that. And they also write stories using Western names.
Oh,
And even now, Japanese and Korean, if you ask young writers. So and that is the result of throughout the decades, we have been losing this traditional literature, I feel. So that is why I ask, is there a true challenge facing traditional literature when it has the whole world, when our younger generation and also us, we have the whole world to choose from? Where does our traditional literature stand?
oh.
And if it is a real problem, how, Dato', how do you think we can actually inculcate it back? Or do we need to? Or do we say goodbye to it?
But in my opinion, it is not that bad.
Okay.
Because as we see in the traditional literature still, I think it's still flourishing. Say about we take pantun, for example. You say we don't hear it every day. Of course, we don't hear literature, people talking in rhymes every day. But we hear pantun in songs every day until I think we have too much. And then even when the Yang di-Pertuan Agong close the parliament or opening of parliament sometimes ago, he also say, wah yang berhormat sedialah berkhidmat or something like that. Well, I don't have it here, but I put it in my book. Well, tonight I'm going to announce. Tonight I'm going to a planetarium negara. There is they call it music planetarium, something like that. The cry of the Cakrawala. So I'm going there, and I'm going to read a Nazam.
Oh, wow.
And also, so we have a few people who in their own.
Could you share a little bit, Dato'?
Now, what did I? I didn't bring this one, but I write about. Lihatlah langit seperti bumbung, bulan dan bintang terapung-apung dalam edaran tidak bertembung kuasa Allah yang maha agung. That is Nazam is a subcategory of traditional Malay poetry which focus on agama, religion, religious teaching. Last time when they teach kitab, when they teach Pekah and all this, they use that song so that the student will be more alert. Those kind of lyrics and I mean the melody. They use that type of melody. So we when we look at the bulan and bintang and all that, so it means a lot to relieve your belief, to strengthen your belief in God.
Datuk, actually, when you sang that, I think that was a highlight of this session.
Oh, no.
And it really gave us the feel of how, when you said the song and the literature actually impacted you.
Yeah.
And I think thank you for Yayasan Hasanah for having this session, because then this is where we can see where our old literature was, and perhaps, you know, with that introduction and that that insight to what the beauty that it was, then it can encourage us to go and find this.
Should I add a little bit more? Is that the only thing that is not quite satisfying is that people are, like you say, the pantun. We have a lot of pantun around, but we don't really sit down and think about the meaning. Say, if I say kajang tuan, kajang berlipat, kajang saya mengkuang layu. Dagang tuan, dagang bertempat, dagang saya terbuang layu, terbuang lalu. If I ask you what is kajang, you very few people will know. They don't take time to get to know what it is kajang. All they can remember maybe sate kajang. But kajang is bumbung. Your awning, your atap.
Yes.
So your atap is made of mengkuang, berlipat. That means it more mengkuang in your atap. Like me, I just take mengkuang layu. Whatever is left that you don't want, that is layu already, worn out. So, like you are different from me because you are dagang, I am dagang. We both go somewhere else, but you have a place, a better place than what I have. So that's all. What I wanted to say is that please look at the pantun that you hear. Try to
discover its deeper meaning.
To discover more. I didn't bring my book, pantun book. It's in the room. Yeah, it's where you can get the pantun, the book later on. Look at should I show it here? Somebody can get for me.
Okay,
Okay,
we
later
finish
on.
our discussion.
Okay.
And then yes. From that, because Nazir, you did mention earlier that you too did not have this exposure to this traditional literature and all that before. What steps do you think can be taken after what Datuk has shared? what steps do you think can be taken by, I mean, not only you, but bookstores, Ministry of Education, Kota Buku, the whole ecosystem to enhance this appreciation and awareness? Because from what Datuk has just shared, there seems to be a lot that we might be missing. So what steps would you suggest?
Well, what step?
Well, one is of course sessions like this.
I guess when you ask the question, what step? Personally, I think it's a massive undertaking, and it requires a lot of like parties to really devise sort of like a plan on how to revive. I think the most important thing, the love for the language. Stories aside, I think the love for the language has to be up prominence, because what Datuk Zurinah tell us about this intricacy of even Malay language and how it has multiple meanings and how you can use a certain word. So for me personally, I read quite late. I started reading seriously when I was in college, when I bumped into an old section of Malay literature in college library, which at that time at College Mara Seremban. So I discovered even contemporary Malay writers like Fadzilah, Shahanun Ahmad, all of the writings. So in that sense, that is my first encounter with literature. Even though we learn literature Bahasa Melayu in school, which at that time I'm RSM, but I haven't know anything about this whole vast corpus of books. So there is a need to, okay, I'm talking about the commercial side of it, the publishers and booksellers. We need more titles, we need more writings, we need more storytellers, we need more of the producer of the literature to be out there. Because to be honest, our numbers of titles every year, it's not enough to basically to offer to our readers. Because you see maybe at Japan, Korea, or even UK, US, they are churning titles like crazy. Like every week they have new titles. Every week they have new titles. And we have to wait like 3 months before one person have like one book. And then wait another 3 months for another book. So in that sense, we need more book titles. Because at the end of the day, it's a point of contact. Because the longer that the title is, the longer that it takes to produce a title, so it lost its sort of like appeal for the readership, because each reader finish reading like 3-5 days, and then they need new materials. If you can't provide that new materials, they will go to elsewhere. So we need more of that. We need also to, how do you put it? Because tying down to the appreciation of language, we can't really restrict literature just as what we understood, like prose or poetry. It should include long-form journalism, for me personally, because now I'm really into that, because the recent books that I read is from Ta-Nehisi Coates, The Message, which is a brilliant prose writing. So we should include music also. We know that Bob Dylan won Nobel Prize of Literature 2016. So the craft of language, it should be language first. Then we can trickle down to other form of literature. Even when you see film, or when you see moving pictures, it all started with writing. It's all started with good writing. You can have the magnificent CGI in the world. If your writing is not good, the movie will become flop. So the dialogue has to be better written. So in that sense, the teaching of language has to be paramount important. Whether it's English or it's Malay or other languages, it should start there first, then people can appreciate literature and go back to literature. Or else it's a losing battle, because you're putting the horse in front of the cart. So yeah.
Okay, I think that is just the perfect place to stop there, because we have to bring our discussion to digital, and not only digital, it is actually fortunately, we have Chairman of Finance here today. So we are also going to talk about the final, one of the last questions we have or discussion we have is how Malaysian contemporary writing as well as writing based on traditional literature, how can we uplift them to, how can we use the digital platforms to popularize our stories, and also how do we make sure, so in a sense this is directed to you, Datuk, maybe you can answer later, how do we bring our stories to movies, theatre and digital stories? If we see motion comics, we see beautiful motion comics in other societies, but not so much for Malaysians. How do we make that happen? Because that's where our youth are going to. How do we make animation? How do we make movies from good writing actually become lumrah in Malaysia? How do we do that? Maybe Shih-Li, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, I think it's for. I think I agree with everything Nazir has said. It's no longer a single medium a thing anymore. We are crossing into film, into script writing, playwriting, all sorts of writing, right? I think the visual media is a huge factor. I think right now we're all consuming probably more visual media than text, you know. And I think perhaps the entry level for young people, for children, it might be through the visual media. I think I want to share a little experience I had when I was in Malacca. We had an event in the Perpustakaan Awam Malacca, and I was quite amazed at how passionate the librarians were in the library. They told me, don't ingat librarian only chop buku and susun buku. Yeah? What they actually do is they do outreach. Okay, they had a bit of funding from, I don't know, I think US Embassy or something. They were given some costumes. So they put on the costumes, they paint their faces, they go to the kindergartens and do roadshows and sign up membership at the kindergartens, not sitting in the library waiting for the parents to bring them. So this is the kind of a direct contact which is needed. Of course, the kids only see maybe the librarian painted as a clown or something like that. But the parents will come to the library. The library has a set of computers for them to use. I mean, they can play around with it and things like that. But they're in the company of books. And eventually they will go to the shelves, and we hope that out of that, maybe a percentage will pick up the books and fall in love with the language. So I think it's where this entry-level media is going to be. And I think right now, no escaping it is visual.
Okay. I'm just checking with the timekeeper. We are still okay for time, eh? Okay. Perhaps this is a good time also because Shih-Li and Datuk, both of you have books translated to other languages. Okay, while we walk away from the digital topic first, just very quickly, can you share how it came to be? That your books were, you know, there are writers in the crowd here as well. So how did that happen? Maybe Datuk, if you can just quickly share.
Okay, quickly. The first book was a message from Mount Ledang. That was written, translated by myself because they wanted to bring poems to Bangkok when I get the Sirat Award.
Yes.
But that was just a limited edition. The second one was Menghadap ke Pelabuhan,
Okay.
Facing the Harbour. It's published by Institute Terjemahan.
And the translation to French?
ITBM. That also I did the translation into English. I did myself. So that was picked up by other languages. Say French. First one was Spanish. Spanish, and then Russian, Japanese, and French. That give me a confidence, because if my translation into English was horrible, nobody will
We'll take it up.
will take it up. So it give me some bagus juga lah.
Okay. Bagus. Sangat bagus.
So,
Actually,
compliment myself.
no. We are all proud of you, Bunda. Okay. Shirley, and yourself? How did that happen?
I think we share a publisher, Ninot,
Yes,
Silverfish Books back in the day. I think it's so important to have somebody who believes in your work, So we had Silverfish Books. So Silverfish took my book to the Frankfurt Book Fair, and that's where all the international publishers are. So he met a gentleman, a French gentleman over there who picked up my book. The guy happened to be a translator, and then he liked the book very much. He came over to Malaysia for a holiday after that. And at the same time, there is another French gentleman who lives in Langkawi and who's also interested in literature, Jerome. Okay, I think we know him. And then he's been actually a major influence in getting some of our work out. He knows the country, and he's bridging, between authors and French publishers. That's how it ended up being published in France. So it's a bit of luck, and who's in the scene at that time. I think there is. We wish that there would be more support from the agencies who get government funding over here, because they are the ones who are taking all the books out internationally to book fairs and all that. So I think that exposure needs to be done by a party who believes in the book.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we are very fortunate to have Mr. Rahman, who is very passionate about bringing Malaysian books overseas. But I think today, the Majlis Buku Kebangsaan and Kota Buku conducts actually clinics before going to Frankfurt, because that is very much into what is perceived, is supposed to be what our Malaysian literature should go into. And I am not sure how this is panning out, but a simple question. Are digital platforms transforming reader engagement and author representation in Malaysian literature? And what does this imply for the future? For anyone, this question. Yes. Oops.
Sudah tua lah. We were often asked whether we are threatened by the digital platform. People are looking at handphones and tabs and all this and not reading books, they say. But to me, digital platform has helped so much in promoting our I'm more close to poetry, the poetry section, the pantun, the syair. Last time, when the government wanted to introduce syair to school, they find it very difficult to get an expert or somebody who can sing syair and as models for the school. But today we see in YouTube hundreds of them, so many what you call it, pendendang, singers of syair. It's been very developing very well, I think.
Okay.
That's all I want to say.
Nazir?
I think like Datuk Zurinah said, digital platform has been transforming the promotion of literature. So we must not conflate between promotion and really going deep down into the literature corpus. So in promotion, excellent. I think what it needs to be done is in the sense of how we negotiate between balance digital and off digital. Okay, for example, okay, what we also did is like we also do quarterly journal in Bahasa Melayu called Suara. So it's sort of like a long form writing because what we figure out, the long form writing format has been diminished in the media outlet. So it's now like 800 words, 500 words, and mostly like news. So we try to bring back that kind of a long form, thoughtful reading materials because we know the attention span of people in digital media can't last long. So they still need some sort of like a paper to really have an intention reading and conscious reading. And I think we have other medias also like film and other sort of like form of medias, but it has, if we were talking about literature, it has to go with words. And the subtleties of trying to write a character, trying to promote a certain values or trying to use an argument instead, it's being done in words. And you cannot skip the language part. As much as you like the visual part, but the language part has to be there. Because it also ties down to this kind of like post-truth, whatever nonsense that we're having. Because people can't really think correctly. But people think with language. People don't think with visual. So that's why it's important to have this kind of a distinction and to bring back two writing materials as if to form a sort of like a logical thinking. Because or else anything can fly off. So it's a whole bunch of issues, and it's a difficult issue to look at and to solve it. But I think there is a need for trying to formulate what is the best way, because I don't think the print media is dead. I think most of them is up and thriving, because to be honest, a lot of like the new generation also is trying to go out of the social media, because I think most of the 1990s live or even born in social media age. Me, fortunately, I have a privilege of having known both worlds before and after social media. So yeah, it requires a whole lot of work, but it goes back to writing. It goes back to good writing. You can't start anything else without that. So yeah.
And Shih-Li?
I think I'm going to reply this as a reader. Okay, I think what the digital media has opened up for me as a reader is opened up a lot of indie works which I would not have accessed if without going to the local bookstores. You know, so online there are a lot of online journals, a lot of very good writers whom I had never heard of before, which I encountered on through social media, through Twitter when Twitter was decent. Okay, now I don't want to say that. Okay, and also as also some writers, I'm sure some of you are familiar with Substack and Medium, right? So there are authors who write fiction, perhaps, but they have strong opinions about certain things. So they write long form essays, political opinion pieces, and all that, and it's up on Substack and Medium. So that also opens up a kind of complementary reading to their other works, to their print novels and their work like that. So I think as a reader, the digital component is really quite important.
Okay, I have 1 minute left. Thank you so much, everyone. But I just wanted to bring together these ideas. Firstly, I think we established in our first discussion that traditional literature, traditional narratives still are very valid today, especially with your story, Pak Kadok, Datuk. So our cultural identity can still be based on traditional literature and infusion of the world around us for the last 50 years or 100 years or so. One point that Nazir brought up, which I think is very, very true, is easy to be lost in digital content, dumb scrolling, etc., visuals and all that, that we lose sight of the importance of it all, which begins in whether it was 500 years ago or 300 years ago or even 200 years ago and right down to today, good writing. whether it's for movies, whether it's for theatre, whether it's for books, whether it's for our children. Good writing is so important. And then, and I think that is where we end. Because the bell is... Yes. Well, what I wanted to say, we know that good writing is part of our society. We have writing that was acknowledged by UNESCO. Salatul Salatin is acknowledged by UNESCO as the only historical record of this region of the 15th and 16th century. We have our books today, which is acknowledged on the world stage. And so we have a very healthy, a very creative, and a very thriving literature movement. And we should not stop it. We must allow it to grow. And it can only grow through discussions, change of thoughts and change of ideas like this, and bringing people together. And for that, we thank Yayasan Hasanah for doing this today. And we hope there will be many more little pots of activities and events that bring people together to talk about this very important issue. And without literature, I think I would like to say, without literature, our society can't grow. And if our society can't grow, we will not move towards a better Malaysia or a better region, as it were. Thank you.